Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Coin Republic podcast. In our episodes, we mostly focus on KOLs in the C suite level, people who own their own stuff, CEOs, CTOs, product based people. But on the other hand, we have this high octane world of consultants who come to these people, CEOs, CTOs, CFOs, and they're no less than these C suite guys because they solve complex business problems. But what might interest you on that context? How does it fit in the Web3 world? Because it's all emerging tech, DeFi, AI, XR, VR, you name it. By the way, you can check out all of these KOL interviews on our playlist just in case. But today, I have a person who's going to weave in all of these stories together from the perspective of a management consultant. He is a senior consultant at BCGX, and he is a keen expert on the topic of Web3 and emerging tech. It is my honor to introduce you guys to the screen with Mr. Tibor Mire. Welcome to the screen, sir. So, right off the bat, you have been a senior consultant for a while now. Your resume is star-studded, right? You work with companies like BCG, but right, I mean, you work with Procter and Gamble as well, so product based as well. What is BCGX?
Yeah, so as you rightly put, Saurav, many people know of the Boston Consulting Group, or short BCG, and they might know us as strategy consultants. But what we have done about a year ago is we have pulled together all our build talent, be it designers, software engineers, venture architects, data scientists, data engineers, and we pulled them in BCGX. So while BCG has been driving strategy transformation, BCGX is building products and capabilities. And I'm a proud member as well now of BCGX.
So, could you let a lot of people who want to focus on a consultancy career, they know, I mean, it's a tough nut to crack out there. You have seen a little bit of both sides of the world, product based and all of that, and you are a Web3 expert. How does it fit in the world of Web3 and emerging tech?
So if I take a step back, the only reason why consultants should exist is because they know something or can help you achieve something that you wouldn't know or be able to do on your own, right? That's the raison d'etre why we need consultants. And that is especially true when it comes down to new technology. And that wave we're now in the middle of, consisting of new technologies such as Web3, XR, or now also the renaissance of AI through generative AI, is just a perfect storm where consultants that are able to ace that space can be of a value add.
Mhm. So I was going through your LinkedIn posts and found a post related to livable life and digital legacy. What do you like your tombstone to say, and why do you hope to see your digital legacy to be?
Well, that's a good catch, and maybe I can also share a bit how I arrived at that topic. It was actually from my personal life. So my wife approached me and said, "Hey, we should talk." I was immediately saying, "Okay, what do you want to talk about?" But she said, we should really think through how do we want our legacy to look like, and this is a range of questions that everybody, to be honest, should be answering for themselves. How do you want to be taken care of if you fall ill and you cannot no longer decide? Or how should your affairs be in order in case something happens? And we have a 5-year-old daughter, and one of the key reasons to actually deal with these questions is also because of her, because in the event something happens to us, we definitely don't want to put her into a situation at some point where she has to deal with ambiguity, but rather can rely on what we have defined for ourselves. Now, to your question, what do I want to have on my tombstone? Well, the first question is, will there even be a tombstone, or will that be maybe
Mm.
something more interactive? Is it going to be maybe a tombstone you can talk to, and maybe a large language model trained on my personality or um, past interviews, or even personal letters that I might have stored, would allow my daughter, or anybody else for that matter, of my loved ones,
Mm.
to still have a conversation long after I am gone. And I think those are some of the questions that arose from that seemingly a simple question of how should your legacy look like.
Hmm. Interesting. This podcast just went a little dark. We're talking about post-mortem NFTs now. That's one of the interesting, that's one of the interesting use cases, and it could be possible. And I love the term digital legacy. A lot of we've interviewed a lot of people from digital ID spaces trying to So let's focus on use cases because I talk to these founders and they have so many use cases for their product. Um, you also are a basketball enthusiast. So if you were given a choice between Jordan or a Kobe Bryant exclusive NFT, what would it be? And in that context, I want you to bridge in a couple of use cases that you think NFTs particularly bring to the table.
Yeah, I'm going to try to take this one alley oop, but for me that one is an easy one. And I'm sorry, all Kobe fans out there. For me, Michael Jordan is still the greatest out there. The Bulls back in the 90s, they were simply a team for themselves. Um, and the NFT bit has actually evolved a lot, right? I think all of us have seen the craziness about 2 years ago. Many of us have lost a lot of money in the NFT space, but NFTs has come a long way. And I think if you talk about use cases, I am certain of that the traditional PFP type use case, that you have a fancy profile picture based on an NFT, that one is
Mm,
dead in the water. I don't believe that that alone has still value per se, with the exception of, let's say, some really specific artwork or some niches. But the things
mm.
that really excite me more, and that's actually a lot of, or you want to ask a question? Yeah.
Yeah, follow up on that because you just said PFP don't matter. So, crypto punks and Bored Ape
Yeah.
Yacht Club guys are gonna take offense to that.
No,
So,
well, I mean, well, yes and no. Yeah. So I think if you take the Board APR Club, if you take close attention, I think they actually have moved already quite far away from just being a PFP, and I think that is the
exactly.
core of it, right? Uh,
Mm,
Having value is coming down to really creating utility beyond the asset itself, right? And I think one thing that we observe in our daily work is that we actually see a renaissance of Web3 when
mm,
it comes down to use cases around loyalty. Yeah. And that's
mm,
one of these areas where loyalty is not a new thing. Loyalty programs have been around for decades, but
mm,
now marketeers and loyalty experts have discovered that that could be one of the golden use cases, where if you intelligently take that utility which is hidden in, let's say, these current Web 2.0 loyalty programs, and you
mm.
unleash it by turning it into a Web3 enabled one, you can suddenly have much bigger ecosystems where you can spend your points, and you can also more easily create token gated experiences available to the different members of such a loyalty program, just to name two of the use cases.
Mm. Also, another use case, potential use case. I'm really excited about that. Well, Vitalik talked about soulbound tokens, since tokenization is the key word we're talking about here, right? And NFTs
Mhm.
are transferable ownership. Soulbound tokens, he says, and it's still on. I don't know what's the update now. It's not, practical yet, but it's like it's unique to yours. Like if I this is token is
Yeah.
it belongs to me. It's my own. So how do you think that sort of ownership would transcend this tokenization space?
Yeah. So I think next to loyalty, which I just mentioned as one of the golden use cases, I think identity is the other clear contender. And what you're mentioning with Soulbound, there are some other technical ways how you can achieve identity. And one of
Mhm,
the newer one that's garnering a lot of hype is the the WorldCoin by Sam Altman, which is going into
Yeah.
a similar direction. You can also achieve identity through, for example, verifiable credentials. So there are different technical means that can use Web3 to prove who you are. And if you can do that, I think there is a lot of value in that, because you mentioned in the beginning of your intro, Saurav, that we are at the intersection of all of these technologies, XR, AI, Web3. But what I can say is that especially in the intersection of Gen AI and, for example, XR, we are rapidly running or already in the middle of a crisis of trust. Very soon, you can no longer tell if is really me you're talking to, or is this just some very a good filter where both my voice and my appearance is being deep faked, and you can not be sure if it really is Tibor Merai here talking. Now, bringing back identity, that has the fundamental opportunity to reestablish that trust, and that we can be sure that if there is a certain, I don't know, green check mark or blue check mark that is connected to a soulbound token, the listeners can be sure that it is Tibor Merai that is saying these things today.
It's interesting that you mentioned WorldCoin. What a crazy stuff that, I mean, a lot of people go into the lines to scan their eyes just to
Yeah.
get a, few airdrops, which again brings to another case study that I don't know if you've heard of. India did it way back with Aadhaar, UIDAI. So they provided social security through biometrics, and they did it in a mass scale, right? Billions of people did that. Now it takes me down to that memory lane when I see altcoin doing that, but in a fancy crypto way. So where do you think government steps in on this, especially in emerging countries like India and certain African countries where think the enterprise level blockchain could bring something to the table?
No, and I think you're rightfully comparing it to the universal ID in India, and I think we have seen time and again that especially emerging countries have taken advantage of leapfrogging certain technological developments. Right, Africa is, I think, a very vibrant continent that has time and again actually leapfrogged and went straight to mobile banking instead of building up a traditional banking system, relying on branches, for example. And so that is definitely something we will see emerging countries dabble with. I just recently saw a report about the use of blockchain in asset-backed securities in China, where we actually see more and more adoption of that technology there. And so, in the end of the day, what I believe when it comes down to the proliferation of these technologies, I don't believe that there's going to be a gradual shift towards Web3. I believe it's going to be pockets where we see suddenly the use case making sense, and where an entire pocket shifts to a blockchain enabled way of solving things. And some of the early contenders I mentioned could be in loyalty, it could be in identity. The European Union is quite advanced when it comes down to using verifiable credentials or self-sovereign identity in the area of university diplomas. So already today, by law, European universities are issuing diplomas and credentials in a decentralized way, making that mobility much easier, that you can study in one country for your bachelor's degree and you go to another European country for the other one. And we see other geographies that are already mimicking that, with the Middle East being quite advanced as well when it comes down to Web3 architecture.
Fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, that would be a consultant's dream, to study in one country and to go. That's already given, isn't it? I mean, you think about it, since you mentioned that, interoperability of transactions, let's just say, right? I see it as a DeFi revolution. Although with Bitcoin, the point was it's a decentralized peer-to-peer transactions that tackles double spending and nada nada nada. You can find it in the white paper.
Right.
But the whole point behind DeFi was to provide liquidity, but at the same time they're prone to attacks. Not saying they're like, they're exclusively being attacked. Even centralized companies are being attacked, right? Cybersecurity attacks. But recently, Curve Finance, okay, one of the biggest liquidity providers, DeFi applications, they got attacked and millions of dollars were lost and people were panicking. Right, it turns out to be a bug of on a compiler of some sort.
Hmm.
So when you hear this, I want to ask you about blockchain trilemma. Right, I'm going to expand on it a little bit.
Hmm.
Security, scalability, and adoption. Right. So security, let's address that first. From that point of view, where do you see it standing? Because people say it's not secure. Blockchain is not secure anymore.
Yeah, so I think if you pay very, very close attention, I think you need to cut also through a bit the noise or a lot of, let's say, also the what the news outlets are publishing, because news love a scandal. They
Except for us.
simply love.
Except for us.
Yeah, so I mean, you're here on the inside, but
Mm.
FTX, just the big
Yeah.
news splash that made. But if you pay close attention and you find out where were the vulnerabilities, it is almost always in a centralized, either technical part of the chain or by humans that have manipulated a certain centralized entity. And I think we're still in the early days of fulfilling the decentralized vision Web3 or DeFi is proposing. Yeah, we aren't there yet that every step of the value chain is running decentralized. And maybe for some time it is still required to have certain centralized functions. But I think with every one of these scandals, the whole space is actually moving forward. I think we see regulators stepping in more actively, and that is a good thing. Because many listeners that are not familiar with the space, they think, oh, once something gets regulated, that's no longer interesting. Suddenly it becomes maybe more expensive or more complicated. No, regulation is a good thing because it gets rid
Mm.
of the gray areas. And gray areas is what prevents institutional investors to go into a space. Institutional investors, they need to have clarity. They need to know what is black, what is white, where can I also trust that what today is black and today is white stays like that, so that I can actually invest in the long term. And that's, I think,
Mm.
something we have seen the space advance quite a bit. Actually, also thanks to those scandals.
So how do you justify SEC continuously, perpetually attacking crypto projects left and right, bullying them to adopt to their ways? Where you talked about regulation, it's positive, but there is a
Mm.
difference between regulation and big boy bullying.
Yeah, I mean that is as you say, it's a fine line, and again, I think the whole Ripple kind of controversy with the SEC attacking Ripple has, in my view, been productive. There is more and more clarity in which circumstances a cryptocurrency is considered a security and where it isn't. And the more we can gain clarity, the more market participants can actually participate. And it's a regulation. The other side is also leading to competition. Yeah, I mean, I grew
Mm.
up in Switzerland. Yeah, which is the
Mm.
home of the traditional, let's say, banking
Yeah,
system. Interestingly, Switzerland is also home to DeFi in many senses. Vitalik was
Zoo.
in Zug. Yeah,
Yeah, Zoo.
exactly. I
Yeah.
was born in Zug myself, right?
Oh,
And
really?
so, and Switzerland has understood, because we are a country with no natural resources, that we have to compete on knowledge and we have to compete also on regulation. That's why Switzerland has become home to the most powerful, some of the most powerful banks on the planet. And that's also why Switzerland is also leading the charge in terms of crypto regulation and is a hub for innovation in that regard as well.
You're the third person I interviewed from Zug this year. So that's interesting. There's something over there in the water or something. You just DeFi
Yeah.
and finance. You guys are obsessed over that. One of the crypto capitals. I do want to talk about
Yeah.
it. I mean, when you talk
Yeah.
about hotspots, destinations for crypto friendly destinations, El Salvador is interesting. Dubai
Yeah.
is glamorous. Zug
Mhm.
is on a different level. So tell me, what other destinations are there? Nigeria is a big adoption center in terms of Africa. So what other checklists, checkpoints you're gonna you can identify for us?
Yes, I mean, I think you hit home on some of the big hitters, right? So me being born in Zug, I obviously have a preference there. I think the Middle East, I would look beyond just Dubai. I think the whole of the Emirates. I think Saudi is also waking up to it. I think that's a very interesting spot to look for, because it has already moved beyond DeFi in my point of view. So there are various projects ongoing to say how can Web3 enables some of the other use cases. I mean, you might have seen Etihad launching their Web3 enabled loyalty program. We do know that the whole Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is quite versed in all things, also XR, but also Web3. So I think we see more and more traction in the Middle East. That's definitely a hotspot to look out for. I was positively surprised by that report about China. Yeah, I mean, having
Yeah.
asset-backed securities running on chain. With China, it's a bit, as a Westerner, you don't see a lot of transparency of what's going on. But typically, when they start embarking on a certain technology, they mean business. So I think that's definitely an area to look out for. And with that connected, obviously, the whole kind of Southeast Asian cluster around Singapore and the others. I think that's definitely also an area to look out for.
I agree. I agree. Also, India. We cannot discount India. It's a growing economy. Yeah.
I think so. I think with India, so I see India is also has a bit two faces in that regard. I think on one side you could be quite skeptical, because in terms of crypto regulation, I think India has rather been sluggish, or let's say a bit in the wait and see mode for quite some time, as opposed to, for example, Switzerland. But if you go
Mm.
one step deeper, I think a lot of the Web3 fundamentals are extremely compatible with the way India ticks. I was just in India 2 weeks ago, also regarding
Mm.
Web3 and these topics. And India is such a federalistic and such a decentralized in terms of culture, in terms of languages, in terms of also the backbone of the economy, which is running on small and mid-sized or even very small
Mm.
businesses, that I think this would be a very fertile ground for many of the applications Web3 can offer.
I agree, and definitely penetration in these markets, in these emerging markets, that would be game changer for Web3. But there are a lot of players who are skeptical of, public blockchains. They say that all of the use cases lies in enterprise level private blockchains. That's where, the magic happens. That's where it's actually used in a proper way. I have interviewed David Palmer for Vodafone, who talked about that in terms of IoT. I interviewed Mr. Giovanni Francesi from Ericsson, who also talked about that. He talked about enterprise level blockchain for Ericsson. Now, from your point of view, who's the winner? Is it the private enterprise blockchains, or is it the retailers, the public guys who are gonna create mass adoption?
Yeah, so I think on that one, I will, for the first time, hopefully in this interview, give you a consultant answer, which means it depends. Yeah, and the reason I say that is I think you need to take a step back and free yourself from the dilemma to say, yes, I have these new hammers, and now I'm going to be looking for nails. I think you need to turn it around. Really start from the nails that you're trying to hammer home today, and having, for example, the you mentioned Bitcoin as one of, let's say, the first ones to break the ice on the whole blockchain topic. If you look at the fundamental need to have a universal tender that is almost on a similar level like cash, that is something which Bitcoin is uniquely positioned to answer, or any kind of also public blockchain, because the publicness of it is part of the core value proposition. If you're trying to hammer home another nail, where you say maybe just within a company, I want to have a better way of track and tracing my internal flows of services or goods, or I have a captive ecosystem like my good friend David Palmer is trying to build out, with IoT, where you actually want to deliberately protect some of that information through a private chain. then obviously you should not go into a public and permissionless blockchain. And I think that is again one of the reasons we can come into the mix, is to say, depending on what you as an enterprise or as a government or as an NGO want to achieve, we can advise you on what's the right architecture, for which elements you should opt even for an on-chain solution, where should it be off-chain, but then also within that, how does the actual implementation look like, so that you can realize the best of both worlds.
That is actually a consultant's answer. I'll take that as a consultant's answer. Which brings me to this question. You've been a consultant, now you're product based again. I'm sounding like a broken record, but I have to ask this for everyone. What do consultants actually do? Also, how could the people who are dreaming to be consultants, how could they focus specifically on Web3? What is the scope of management consultancy in Web3?
Yeah, and sometimes my 5-year-old daughter asks me the same question. So, Daddy, what do you do? And what I tell her is, I say I help companies. That's probably the simplest way of putting it. So wherever a company needs help, and help can be in different shapes and forms, we come in. Sometimes help needs to happen on the question of what should you do. Yeah, that's more on the strategy level. But then once you have nailed that, it's the question on how do you do it. And that's where typically also BCGX can come in and really help you do it and decide what's the right architecture, and then actually step it up and do so in a de-risk way. And that is, I think, the simplest term how we can do it. And in terms of Web3 and how does consulting in Web3 look like, or how can also somebody of the listeners become part of that? So we have within BCG and BCGX, we obviously are organized by different industries. So we have people dealing exclusively with banks, people dealing with telco operators, people dealing with energy companies, and so on and so forth. But we also have people that are in different functions. And one of these functions is the whole Web3 and blockchain and crypto area. We also have teams focusing on XR and metaverse and these kinds of topics. And so once you have cleared the bar to actually become part of BCG, and that's a bar everybody needs to meet, that's just our, let's say, own QA, then you can get assigned to one of these teams and you can work on these topics across industries.
That's an interesting topic. One of the final questions I really want to ask, because we talked about finance, which is if it's the skeleton, if it's the internal neural system, marketing is the skin, it's the aesthetics, right? And we have seen a lot of interesting marketing strategies coming out of these big NFT players, right? They meme coins, for example, they thrive on narrative, right? Pepe, Bold recently have happened, Pump and Dump, but they thrive on narrative. So I want to ask, where do you think, if you were to consult a Web3 company or a traditional centralized company to come into this Web3 space, in terms of marketing, what are the major areas that you're going to focus on? Are we going to see metaverse level of marketing? Those headings on metaverse, advertising on metaverse. How far away is that from the future?
Yeah, so you were asking two questions. One was kind of what would I advise a Web3 company in that space, what to go for, and the second one is how close are we to that metaverse future? I mean, on the first one, let me actually quote another fellow BCGX managing director and partner who I was conversing with about the whole topic of also investing in companies, be it in the Web3 space or not. And one question that he said that a friend of his is asking herself when she decides on which company to invest in, and that's true for any kind of Web3 or non-Web3 company, is she's asking herself three questions: oxygen, medicine, or candy? So if you're a Web3 company or even an individual, ask yourself, is the service you're providing candy? Because that's the first one nobody needs when budgets get tough and you can survive without candy forever. Is it medicine? That's already a good one, because without medicine you're in pain. Yeah. So if you're really solving a pain, what is it, and does the medicine work? Or are you one of the very rare unicorns that is actually providing oxygen that companies or individuals cannot live without if you provide it? I think that's the more on the meta level what I would suggest Web3 companies take a long and hard look at what they're offering, in which of these three buckets they fall, and how can they move towards either medicine or even oxygen. And I think the second question around how close are we towards this kind of metaverse vision, I think we aren't there yet, but I think we're closer than you might think. I think we see now acceleration happening across all of the three ingredients, how we lay it out towards the metaverse. Immersive technologies, with Apple Vision Pro now entering the market, which will be a step up. We have the Quest 3 coming in with Meta coming out in October. We have rumors that also others are launching their devices. And that will not yet be the end of it. It took until the iPhone 4 that the smartphone market really ballooned, but maybe the Apple Vision 4 might then already be the moment for that. So XR is moving in that direction. We have Web3, which is, I think, undergoing some growing pains, but I think in itself, Web3 has undergone the Gartner hype cycle. And we're now on that slow but steady upward trajectory, where I do believe that more and more of these fundamentally useful use cases are emerging. And the third ingredient are these meta worlds, so platforms where people currently spend their time playing with Roblox or Fortnite or some newer platforms. And as they are all converging, I do believe that more and more of our daily life will be happening in some shape or form of this metaverse future.
Fantastic. Before we part, final question. Do junior management consultant guys, do they need to fear their job to ChatGPT and generative AI?
I mean, it is just amazing what ChatGPT and generative AI is capable of doing. And I actually myself, I'm using it almost on a daily basis. Some stuff is on the personal side, but we're also embedding it in the way we do work. But I think I don't think that, and that is true for any profession. And you've heard the saying for sure as well. I don't think a junior management consultant will be replaced by ChatGPT or generative AI, but he or she will be replaced by another junior management consultant using ChatGPT and generative AI. So it's more about turbocharging what we do with these tools, but that will just kind of augment the whole profession in itself.
That's a fair enough, politically correct answer. Thank you for that. But I am going to say I had fun today. I had got a lot of things to learn. I'm going to look at this interview as I edit it and take something out of it, and hopefully going to give you some snippets out of it. You know the deal, ladies and gentlemen. Use the timestamps, navigate throughout the video, share, and follow Mr. Tibor on LinkedIn mostly. He's very active there. Twitter, is that a good place to,
LinkedIn is my number one channel. So if you want to stay up to
Okay.
date, follow me on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn it is. And whatever you need, if you can afford it, go to VCGX. That's it. I don't know if they can, but if there is any CEO watching it, I don't know. I'm gonna pitch it. Who cares? All right. So thank you very much for tuning in. I'm gonna see you on another episode, but I'm gonna keep a close eye on what Mr. Tibor does, so that if he comes on news, I can cover it and get some PR for myself as well. Bye bye.
Thank you.